I'm just going to try improv too. I'm making this video as a concerned citizen of the world. As someone who has watched emotional train wrecks slowly unfold in front of them, somehow not seen by everyone, but visible to many. And that is that fear is dividing us. A big part of a generation of Americans were taught to fear each other. As little kids, don't trust strangers, stranger danger. Americans were fear-mongered by news that was for-profit news. So they just wanted more watch, they wanted more reach, they wanted more advertising dollars instead of just caring about the news. So they were having, I remember even as a Canadian going to America and find like, oh my God, the news is scary here. It was different. Because there was like music making me feel more nervous as they were showing me scenes usually of black crime, disproportionately black crime, making me afraid. This caused American nervous systems to be in dysregulation. They were taught to fear each other, and then it was reinforced on their televisions. And then because they have those amendment rights that they can say anything they want, news agencies absolutely spread disinformation, arguing in court that they were entertainment, but people believing what they said. This was gaslighting. This was narcissistic abuse, literally by a television news program. In narcissistic abuse, the gaslighting, the saying of alternate information to create a different reality, well, in the case of a narcissist, they're pulling you into their preferred alternate reality. So a narcissist has a vision of themselves. Oh yeah, I'm a good Christian man. Yeah, and they only accept whatever is good about that matches their self-image. So if someone else mirrors them back as a impatient or boring man or something that causes them to feel shame, then they use narcissistic defenses against it. And those defenses include deflection. No, I didn't, you did. They include projecting our feelings onto others. When I feel angry, I think that you are angry, and then I blame you for my anger, is a narcissistic defense. Gaslighting for manipulation, just saying what we want to be true instead of what actually is true. Saying what is convenient to be true. And that is what is happening with news programs. They are, instead of speaking the truth, they're speaking what their billionaire owners generally want them to be speaking, and that has been fear-mongering, because fear turns off empathy, and fear causes us not to love others. When we fear someone, it turns off our empathy response. As humans, it stops us from feeling with them because we are afraid of them. So we have a nervous system response to say, this is an enemy, and our body acts like they're the enemy. And this is the case of what happens in racism, which is an emotional disorder, and it is abuse. Racism is abuse. It is. When you're having a fear response towards someone because they have more pigment in your skin, you're having that fear response is your nervous system programming. It came from the news, it came from your ancestors, it came from all sorts of racist places that spread the lies that race is different. We are all the human race. And as the human race, we are a part of nature. And as a part of nature, we exist in diversity. And that means diversity of gender experience and sexual orientation experience. What matters is consent, not who it is that's doing it. It's all about consent. We exist in diversity, and we all bring different things to this planet, and that's good for the planet. It's why we exist in diversity, or we would have died out. The genes to... There are no mistakes. And sometimes a person's born into a body and they identify with a different energy than what their body is showing them. And they're like, no, this is not... And people who do not understand are generally people who are not able to take the other person's point of view and imagine, what would it be like if I was born into a body and I felt like I was a woman and I felt like I was trapped in my male body? They're not able to do that because they are not going to point of view, because they are emotionally immature. We are watching an emotional immaturity crisis right now, and it is destroying society as emotionally immature leaders end up taking roles they should never have had. There needs to be testing. There should be an emotional maturity test to be an important leader, because you're making decisions about humans. It should not be okay to have a mentally ill president. It should not be okay. That should never have been possible. And the rest of the world watching, we're like, whoa, there's an angry 7-year-old running the most powerful country in the world. Yeah, that can't go wrong. This is verifiable. There's no mental health professionals looking at this man and thinking anything else. I mean, he's demonstrably an angry 7-year-old in his behavior. If you were to take all of his behavior and put it into AI and say, how old is this person? Guess how old he is by the way he speaks, the things he does, the lies he tells, the way he blames others, the way he thinks everyone's taking advantage of him, so he's going to take advantage of them. That's the narcissistic, traumatized viewpoint, right? And it's shared by way too many right now. The only path back is love. Honest to goodness, we are pack animals. We evolved to love each other. And love is not an emotion that we give away. It's an emotion that we share. When I'm working with people who are suffering narcissism, I teach them that it feels good in your body to love others. It feels good in your nervous system. And then when you love them, it makes it easier for them to love you too. Because just imagine someone comes up to you angry. How easy it is to feel love with them. No, it isn't easy to feel love with someone who's feeling angry. And it's also not easy to feel love with someone who's feeling fear. Fear is the opposite of love, because fear turns off love. So when they are teaching, when a president-elect is spending tens of millions of dollars on commercials causing you to fear trans people, you've got to think, why are they sending us commercials to fear trans people, spending tens of millions of dollars on that? Because they want you to fear trans people. Why? Because that turns off your empathy for trans people. Why? Because then you dehumanize them. Why? Because then you're okay if the government doesn't treat them like humans. Why? Because if they can treat some humans not like humans, that list can grow. And then they don't have to treat anyone like humans. You're just little cogs. Just little cogs in the United States of corporate America. Dehumanizing the migrants by lying about the migrants. They always committed less crimes than the average white person in America. They were never taking your jobs. What they were doing was making your life more affordable. I've spent months and months in the US. I'm not going to say I'm an expert, but I do have a lot of experiences, and I did gain a lot of insight. And I can tell you from my time I spent in Arkansas, I could see that there were many Mexican workers who were working in the poultry farm and on construction sites, not being paid a living wage, but producing houses that were affordable. You know, you can buy a house under $200,000 because half the laborers were not making a living wage. Well, you're smiling at the bank, you know, you bought a house for $200,000. Up here, you can't get one for less than $1 million, you know, in the Toronto region. Doesn't exist. because we have fair wages. We don't actually, but we have much more fair wages, you know? You're blaming migrants for taking the jobs that were paying a slave wage. And that was literally a class of slavery that was created. And black people have been ringing the alarm bells that we can't live like this for decades. They've been underpaid. They've not been paid a living wage. It's kept them in a different form of slavery where they couldn't buy anything and they could never get ahead, and they're just living to pay the bills. But you know what? They started to get out of this. They started to break out of this system that they were forced into by colonizers with education, and they're rising, and this is threatening to the ruling class. What else is happening? White people are end up in the same slave wages. The wages that were meant for slaves ended up with white people too. They're also working at Costco. They're also working at Tim Hortons. They're also working at all these businesses that pay minimum wage. And the minimum wage anywhere, I can tell you, is not okay. In Toronto, it's such an expensive city. The minimum wage needs to be something like 44 or 66. It was a big number that if you can afford to live in Toronto, the minimum wage. But I think it's like $19 or something like that. But in the US, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. I mean, that's... No one should have to give up an hour of their life for such a small amount of money. There should not be 1,000, no, not 1,000, but there's more than 750 billionaires in America in 2026. There should never be a billionaire. There is no need for one person to have that much control. And that is what's happening. Billionaires are paying for advertisements to buy their elected officials to make their decisions for them. That should not be okay. You shouldn't be able to pay for... There needs to be caps on these things. They need to be capped. It needs to be a reasonable cap. I don't know, 10,000? Certainly not millions, or even tens of thousands. Honestly, it's I mean, Vance was bought. America has become a propaganda machine for profit, and it's destroying itself right now. And I write not to accuse of what's happening. I write because I work with this on a one-to-one basis, and America needs to work on this on a one-to-one basis. And that is why I'm providing free materials and workbooks and worksheets called Love Loops. Because the work is in learning to love each other, creating love loops with each other. I started to explain it earlier, and then my ADHD took me on a different branch. But when I'm working with a lot of men who have been taught not to feel feelings, here's the thing: if you don't feel your feelings, you can't just turn it down on some of them. You end up turning down the volume on all your feelings. So when men are taught not to feel fear or not to feel tenderness, they're literally turning down their emotional system, and that's causing a level of disconnection. As they turn down their emotional system, they're more out of touch with themselves, and then they're more out of touch with the people in their lives. And what I most commonly see in couples is now this is sexist, this is just the most common. A man and wife come in, and the wife is feeling alone, overwhelmed. She can't do this anymore. And the husband has I have no idea. I have no idea what's wrong. I do the things when she asks me to do the things. I don't know what's going on. What is going on is the man is out of in touch with their emotions generally. And if you're not going into your emotions, for example, if you don't go to sadness, or if you're not going into fear, the rent is due tomorrow and you don't have it, and you're not allowing yourself to feel the anxiety of that, then your partner is feeling that alone. And that's leaving them alone in their emotions. You are supposed to feel together. If there's family stresses, you're supposed to both feel it. And that's actually sharing the burden. We are meant to share the burden by feeling with each other. We are meant to feel with each other. That's how we release our emotions. We're able to feel them and let them go. Emotions are not who we are, and they're not states. They're just emotional expressions of energy but we can get stuck in them. But you experience your emotions as energy, right? There's an energy that comes of a feeling of grief and pain and sadness about someone having died. But then you can also find something funny in the next instant and find yourself laughing with a different way. Even at a funeral, you could accidentally, end up in a wave of laughter because your brain's just giving you a break for a second and allowed a different thing to come through your nervous system. Your nervous system, we regulate with each other. Someone's in a bad mood beside you, that might turn you in a bad mood because you're dealing with that and you're co-creating with that and you're relating with that. So how you feel impacts others, and how you feel impacts the kind of relationships that you're able to create for yourself. If you've been taught to fear your neighbors, you're not going to co-create the same kind of relationship that if you've taught to lean on your neighbors, that it's good to have community. Community is good for us. We are pack animals. But too many traumatized people have then gone to traumatized churches who say, we are good, they are bad. Trust us, don't trust them. We are good, they are evil. That is a toxic belief. It may be your belief and you may think it's founded in something, but that is a toxic belief in any religion. The belief that others is evil dehumanizes others, and it causes the abuse we are looking at today. That is just rampant. When you consider someone evil, that causes in you a nervous system response of fear, whether or not you want to. Now, if you're out of touch with your nervous system anyway, you might not feel anything. But thinking someone is evil is how nuns abused First Nations children here in Canada. Many children, innocent children, died literally by the cruelty of being considered evil because they were not Christian. Therefore, they were heathen, they were evil. The belief that others is evil is an emotionally immature, traumatized belief that needs healing in America, especially from a generation who have been taught to fear each other. Love loops is about creating loops of safety together instead of fear loops. Fear loops have been coming through disinformation and misinformation. It's just rampant. And then people watch this program and then they say it on the pulpit and then they spread it there and then people think it's true. We're just a bunch of pack animals. We are just meant to love each other, period. You're meant to love the trans neighbor down the hall. They're just trying to get on with their life. They're just trying to live. They're just trying to be. We're supposed to love the black family next door. They're not a threat. Just because you've seen black people on the news too much doing the things that are disproportionate. There's so much. And what is the antidote? Knocking on the door and inviting them for dinner. Getting to know each other. Invite your trans neighbor over for Sunday roast. I'm a big believer in eating together, and I think potlucks are a great way to do. And that's why a potluck guide is one of the first things I shared on loveloops.love. It's a free resource because we're just out of touch with each other. And some people are only connected at their church with others, and that's not okay either. You're supposed to connect with everyone. You're supposed to love everyone. And a lot of people fear Islam. They fear Islam, but honestly, if you knew anything about it, you would know that it's mostly based on love as well. Loving each other and caring about each other. And the language, in fact, builds it in much really beautifully. They address each other in a more loving way than we do. Hi, how are you? It's more like peace be with you, God be with you, those kind of things when you translate, I think. They're not to be feared. Difference is not meant to be feared. So I'm also writing books, and I need these books not to be invisible because they mean so very much to me. It's about understanding what's happening now so that we can change. As a Gestalt relational therapist who uses tools from all over the place, I understand that understanding what's happening is the first step. Accountability and acceptance is the first step towards change. If I'm working with someone who suffers narcissism and they are not able to take accountability, then they are not able to be a recovering narcissist, and they are not. And I've also discovered that a recovering narcissist, it's like a recovering alcoholic. You need to be in recovery or you are still an alcoholic. You need to be a recovery or you are still an emotionally immature human. These things need personal growth journeys. Generations before us have been traumatized, frankly, and especially in the US, where so many came back from war. And just imagine a man comes back from war decades ago. Trauma is completely not understood yet. Completely just... And so they're back from war. Let's say their best friend had his head blown off. And they're back from war. Thank goodness, isn't that great? They're back from war. Oh, you must be so happy to be back from war. Isn't it great you're back from war? You must be happy to be home. Aren't you happy to be home? No, he was not happy to be home. Of course, it was always his dream to come home to his loved ones, but he was traumatized, which means his nervous system was probably still living in trauma while he's trying to pretend he's happy at home. And he may be able to have waves of happy, but his nervous system was traumatized. We did not understand complex PTSD. And those men tried to hold it together, and they did the best they could. But you know what? They had to avoid certain emotions because they were too dangerous. Because if they let themselves go to sadness, then they would have to be sad about their best friend who died beside them. Their best friend who in fact was the closest person in their life ever. Because we men, we've been taught not to connect with each other, to not be affectionate with each other. We're supposed to be affectionate with each other. That's homophobia. By the way, homophobia is causing straight men to be less affectionate and less close with each other. And phobia is a phobia. And it's another thing we work on in my books, because I'm working on anti-homophobia by having a voice come in every now and again so that you don't just hear the propaganda against it from church pulpits or wherever it's coming from. There's nothing wrong with diversity. We humans, we exist in diversity just like all the other animals. We do. And we shouldn't be punished for our diversity. We shouldn't be blamed. It's the point is that we love each other and treat each other with love and kindness. Not that we don't have same-sex relationships, that we don't have same-sex relationship with someone who doesn't want one and doesn't feel an inkling for one. Because if there's no desire, it's basically abuse. Diversity is just natural. As long as we all respect each other and everything's consensual, people are allowed to love each other who feel love for each other. It's okay. It doesn't, someone else attaching their marriage to doesn't hurt your marriage. You know, giving rights to transsexuals does not take away anyone else's rights. Giving rights to all humans doesn't take away rights. And that's part of the thing too. There's so much confused, twisted, logical fallacy thinking in the US, and much of it coming from science, anti-science movements. Anti-science movements causing ignorance that the rest of the world looks in and is like, oh my goodness, there's so much ignorance. Science basically means double-checked, fact-checked, made sure, tried to prove against, and we couldn't prove it wrong, so it's true because it's science. They've been taught that you can't trust science. It's literally the opposite of what science is. The gaslighting has been so crazy. Not trusting professionals and what they study and what they do. Believing someone who's every day an ignoramus over all the leading economists in the world. For example, a whole section of society didn't believe all the economists that said that the plans of the president would be detrimental for society and that tariffs would make everything expensive. Oh no, he knows better. He knows better than all the world's economists? Why would you think that? What is happening inside the community structure, the lack of trust that people have? It's been planted, it's causing division. And Love Loops is about bringing it back together again. We are meant to love each other. You know, if we loved each other, if everyone loved their neighbor, we'd be fine. reach out to your neighbors. Go on loveloops.love if you need a guide for it. Even if you don't need a guide for it, I have a free guide for getting neighbors together to start friendship groups. But the potluck thing is the thing I really recommend. Food circles. Life is expensive, and if you live in a place where you're particularly sensitive to the increase in grocery prices, set up a food circle with your neighbors where you buy things in bulk and then share them. And you take turns with who does it, or maybe you have one Costco membership in the group of 6 families, and every now and again, the person goes to Costco and buys things in great bulk that you split up between you, like huge, 50 kilograms of rice, and you break it up into bags, and it's way more affordable. And it's good to lean on each other. We're meant to lean on each other. You'll just be closer for it. You'll just trust each other more for it. You'll just have more friendships because of it. We are supposed to lean on each other. American society has a lot of it has become like trying to pretend we're better than we are, trying to pretend I don't need help. Oh, nothing wrong here. Nothing wrong here. Oh no, we're perfect. Oh yeah. We're not supposed to be perfect. We are supposed to lean on each other. We're supposed to. Next door neighbor says, "How's it going, Mary?" And like, "Oh my God, it's going so bad. This is happening." And then Mary has a chance to support us emotionally, because that's what we're meant to do as pack animals. Not pretend, "Oh no, nothing's fun. No, everything's great over here." Meanwhile, both kids are in rehab, and she's drowning herself with a bottle of wine every night. "Yeah, everything's great. How are you?" "Oh yeah, I got a new Mercedes. Yeah. Meanwhile, she's dying inside. We are not meant to live like this. We are meant to be vulnerable and caring with each other. We are meant to trust each other. We need to break these fear loops. That's what Love Loops is about. I hope you'll join me on my Substack at Love Loops Movement. And join me on my website, loveloops.love. Be part of this change. I'm available to talk on podcasts, to interviews on your news stories. I usually have been a speaker about narcissism and how I understand and work with it, but right now it's all about how do we turn this ship around. It's a big topic. I was writing one book on it. It became 4 books. And by the way, I have a drag character named Doreen, and every now and again I kind of have the desire to let her out in the way I express myself, and you can see Doreen sometimes. But the book morphed from one thing to another thing to another thing. It started really almost 10 years ago when I was waking up to narcissism, and I was sort of shocked, because whatever you grow up with is normal for you. So, I didn't even get finished with the PTSD story. So think about all the men home from war who are actually traumatized, but it's not their fault. They weren't like that before the war. Well, that's the only model the kids know if that's their dad. If that's their father, they don't know what other fathers necessarily look like. They experience their father. That's their father role. And if dad taught them to tough it up and be a man, oh, don't cry. Don't cry. Oh, they compare their trauma to the trauma, and like nothing can compare to it. So it's all, and they might teach their kids to disconnect from their emotions to be a man, for example. And they might need to just simply avoid their own emotions. So if they're doing so, they're not feeling with their children, and that's a form of disconnection. That is lack of empathy. And your kids don't feel seen and understood, and they don't develop the emotional maturity that they should. And then you might be a bad partner. I mean, you might be doing your best, and but you might be triggered. Maybe he has a temper. Maybe he has a short temper. Well, that means he gets triggered into anger in inappropriate times. It means he has big reactions, which ends up, in a way, causing emotional abuse in a number of different ways, one of which the family learns how to manage dad's emotions so that he doesn't get triggered. So instead of having a real relationship, they're basically having a narcissistic relationship, because they're managing the traumatized person's emotions. And that's, what does that look like in the next generation if you've had that as your model? It looks like narcissism. If you've not been having that meaningful connection. Now, many mothers were able to save the day and be empathic for the whole family. And it's exhausting. Basically the only parent. And that's the other part that I see in couples too. Basically, so usually the wife is at the end of her rope, and usually the husband doesn't know why. And one of the things that's happening is that he essentially expects her to be his parent. He doesn't notice the things that need to be done. He doesn't automatically notice and console his kids. He doesn't automatically take the garbage out. He doesn't automatically clean things after himself and help pick up the things that the kids leave around. And he has to be asked, honey, can you do this? Oh, yeah, sure. Honey, can you drive her there? Yes, yeah, I can do that. Honey, can you help with this? Yes, yep. She's not meant to be the parent. You're meant to also be in it looking for the things that need to be done. There's so many families where the wife is expected to be the one who notices literally everything that needs attending to, and then to request it of the husband, rather than being a unified team in it. And I see so many exhausted women trying to carry the load. And it's not just women. It happens in same-sex relationships as well. And it can be the reverse. It does happen in the reverse. But we're watching all these dysfunctional family systems going on. And of course, the pandemic magnified everything. The pandemic made everything worse, certainly. If you were feeling anxious before pandemic and then your door got closed off to everyone around you, yeah, as human pack animals, we need each other. We're supposed to be regulating with each other. And people really, really noticed the difference. And when we had to be kept apart from each other because, it was an airborne illness, and the hospitals were too full, they were too busy, and doctors and nurses were overwhelmed, and their mental health matters, and their ability to take care of people matters, and their capacity matters. So we were being kept apart from each other to keep the rates low enough that there wasn't too many people in the hospital. They were at the edge of what they could do. And all these people were like, they're trying to control us. They won't let us go to church. They won't let us go to church. This is about keeping us away from church. No, it was about having the hospitals not literally exploding. But they preferred to believe it was a conspiracy. Because it hurt not going to church. For many people, it's the only place they learned that was safe. Because their church said, we're good and they're bad. We're good and they're evil. Imagine, it's the only place you feel like you're allowed to love people, which is exactly the opposite. It's just supposed to be a place you practice loving, and then you go out in the world and do what you've practiced. It's a safe place that should be practicing love and kindness. And that's what Love Loops is about. I think everyone should be practicing love and kindness as our goal behavior. And that means curiosity instead of judgment, right? I'm someone who notices patterns, and that's what I do for a living. I notice the patterns of what's happening in front of me so I can point them out, and then people can adjust them. So I watch someone express something, and I watch the person, twist what they just were told, and then serve it back as if it had been hostile, for example. And I can see it happening in front of me, and I point it out, and that's where they're able to change the loop from a fear loop or an anger loop into a love loop, because now they're receiving the communication. So many requests being seen as criticisms. Or, requests for improvement being seen as criticisms. That's emotional immaturity. Well, you don't become emotionally mature by not feeling your emotions. Just like you don't get good at playing soccer by not playing soccer. Many men did not become emotionally mature by just holding it together and pretending it wasn't so. And pretending they don't feel afraid when they do feel afraid. We are supposed to feel fear. It's a legitimate emotion saying, like, open your eyes now, something bad might happen. And we're supposed to communicate it. We're not supposed to pretend it doesn't exist. We need to acknowledge it, to let it move through us, to express it, to support each other in it, to check it out. A fear response needs to be, in the case of human nature, we need to find out that the other person is safe to turn off the fear response towards them. And if we're not allowing ourselves to find out that the other person is safe because of fear, like if you fear your trans neighbor, so they're just someone you're like, ugh, you're never going to turn off that fear response, right? you actually need to start a love loop to be able to turn it off. You need to replace the fear loop with a love loop. And you start a love loop by reaching out with love and kindness. And maybe the first time you just say hello to them. And maybe it just means starting a conversation with them, being curious about their human life, just like your human life. You have way more in common than you don't. The invention that we're that different, we're not that different. We're just all a bunch of pack animals. We're all each other's brothers and sisters and non-binary family members. We all can trace back to the same black woman in Africa. Like we're all related. And we're acting like we're enemies. We're never supposed to be enemies. That is trauma. And the greed and materialism is emotional immaturity. When people wonder what Europe looks over and sees America as, they see them as emotionally immature because that is what they're watching. Valuing things over people is emotionally immature. Having a we versus them mentality is emotionally immature. Thinking we're better than, in fact, is emotionally immature. And that's part of the work with narcissism work. They end up going to a feeling of better than because of that sense of disconnection. Americans have been taught, oh yeah, we're the best. Oh, we're the best. We're better than everyone. Everyone wants to be us. And then Americans travel and like they're shocked that other people don't want to be them. And now in 2026, like no one wants to be them. And they're literally inflicting damage all around the world. So far in Canada, $1,300 per person. We figure it. What the administration has done so far as of January 2026, $1,300 per person you've cost us already, with that crazy decision. But not just that, the anxiety that everyone feels, that's the real cost. Like the world has become more and more anxious. When you have a madman running the most powerful country on earth, it is alarming to everyone's nervous system because of all the crazy things he does. And the way to feel good is to love each other. So go to protests and love each other at the protest. Go to the protest and sing songs together, arm in arm, at the protest. Share hugs at the protest. Love the ICE officers at the protest. Love is the opposite of fear, and fear is the opposite of love. And fear causes hate. It causes hate because when we fear others, and that's why fear is so bad, and that's why the toxic belief that we're good and they're bad is so bad. It is destructive. And I'm here for it. In a four-part, my original book, The United States of Disconnection, came out in September, and it's an invisible book because love doesn't sell, but love loops a path back to us. I mean, it originally started as the worksheets that I use with narcissistic clients working on narcissistic processes of emotional growth to change the processes, and using love loops to replace fear loops was a vernacular that we created together. The idea was to take all the worksheets and make it into a workbook so that I just could send clients a workbook instead of all these individual worksheets when this comes up and that comes up and that comes up. Because we know, there's about 100 set of things that seem to come up with everybody that's dealing with their emotional maturity. And that one thing led to another thing, but also the book that was originally about me became about the United States. But as I was writing it, as you can see, my ADHD of the train takes a lot of different directions. It took a lot of different directions, and it ended up becoming 4 books because literally the first book, it just had so much just in explaining what's happening. 68 short, easy to read chapters. And it's being re-released with a table of contents because the original version accidentally did not have a table of contents. Oh, and a new name that they're controlling us with fear. because they are controlling us with fear. It's what's happening right now. And that's why love is the answer. It truly is. It truly is the answer. You are meant to love your neighbors. You're meant to love each other. You're meant to feel your oneness. You are Americans first. The polarization that happened with your politics was never meant to happen. It's not us versus you. It's like we have some ideas, and we also have some ideas, and we both have ideas of what's going to make the best society. And some of our ideas differ because we have different opinions. But like in Canada, where our parties are this different, in America they're like that different. It's and not only are they that different, they also have literally, I mean, one side literally projecting onto the other side themselves and not even seeing the other side. Democrats are demonized. They are demonized, and they are not seen anything like what they are. Canadians would essentially be Democrats. Even the conservative among us would basically be Democrats. Because Democrats want what's good for most people, like universal health care and funding for education and loans for small businesses, helping each other out, community support. And the other side has just been basically controlled by fear to literally vote against their own health care for their own community, their own family, themselves, through disinformation and misinformation. I mean, a whole party essentially is living in an alternate reality. And that's a big part of the movement too. I've written a bunch of wake-up guides to welcome us back to reality, because, you know, vaccines have made the human experience much more bearable on this planet, and they've been demonized. Again, the word demonized, that's a polarized good-bad response, and it's emotional immaturity, and it's narcissistic. So vaccines have been demonized. They're not perfect. Some people have reactions to them, but overall, what kind of difference are they making in the world? A really, really good difference. The death rate of babies and children is way, way lower with vaccines. The ignorance is outstanding. And the fear disinformation campaigns, like they were trying to control us through the vaccine. There were even people thinking that the vaccine was implanting something that was some kind of code and some kind of biblically foreshadowed implant, or, you know, it's so many misunderstandings. So there's a book about that. There's a book about freedom, because Americans, generally speaking, have been propagandized since their birth about what freedom means, and they've gotten it backwards. There's two sides to freedom, right? To every freedom, there's another side to it. And in America, you've taken different sides than what most of the world has agreed is the side they want. In Canada and in Europe and many places, really, the freedom to be free from gun violence way outshines the freedom to have guns. The freedom to have guns everywhere, the freedom to be free of gun violence. I live in downtown Toronto. I literally have never, ever walked out the door thinking, what if I get shot? Never, ever. I can walk out the door at 3 a.m. and walk through the downtown core and not fear my safety. I might feel a little creepy if someone's right behind me, but never would I imagine I'd get shot. And I say that as a Canadian who has an unusual amount of trauma history in my family, because my own brother had a head injury that was a gunshot. But I have no fear of it because it's not part of our world here, right? Even if it's part of my trauma history, I still don't think it's going to happen to me on the street. And I haven't even, So I hope you'll join me on the Love Loops Movement Substack. I'm releasing the first book chapter by chapter. And it's you can just invite neighbors together and start a book club just by being on the same Substack. You know, because you can read this chapter on the Substack and then talk about it. And it's not about the book club. It's about getting people together for meaningful conversation. It's about getting people together maybe who don't usually get together. It's about, you can do it at your library, your anywhere you can find a place to sit together, honestly. It could be at a park if the weather's a nice, someone's rooftop. Your own place, of course, And that's why I have guides going on at loveloops.love. There's also a guide for high schools, because we're pack animals and we're meant to love each other. Love Loops groups for high schools is a guide that kids can use at school to start their own Love Loops group at noontime, to practice relational skills together, to create a space where they practice love and kindness as goal behavior, to create a space where they feel safe to be vulnerable with each other and they learn to deal with their emotions and to talk about how they're feeling, to have good mental health, essentially. Love Loops groups for high school are groups. It's a free resource, and anyone could start a Love Loops group. You just need a teacher to give you their classroom. If generally, and teachers could also start Love Loops groups, and in fact, they really should. I'm not sure if there's different boards would have different rules about that. But this was in response to the idea of turning point groups at schools. Made me sick to my stomach. They preach fear, and fear is not life-giving. Fear is not life-giving. We preach love. We preach love at Love Loops. And Love Loops is a branch of the Narcissism Recovery Project, because it all started with my work with narcissism and then discovering the only sustainable way out of narcissism is creating love loops, creating relationships that are reciprocal, loving, where we can be against narcissistic behavior and not against the person, so that we can learn relational skills that are not narcissistic. And when we're narcissistic, to recognize, like, oh, that's narcissism. Like, oh, whoops, let me try again. I wasn't listening, but I do care. Let's try this again. Those kinds of things, practicing active listening, intentionally practicing point of view, and intentionally practicing empathy, imagining what it would be like to be them through visualizations, and learning to do it themselves, to imagine, like, okay, what would it be to be like if it was my wife, and if I woke up suddenly and I was suddenly being asked for sex, and like, how would I feel probably? And like, so many people lack empathy, and they lack that point of view. And if they grew up in a family that was critical or blaming or judgmental, they need more love loops. We need more love loops. And you know what? We're suffering in a loneliness epidemic right now, because we're living in an individualistic society where we're supposed to be strong alone. It's always a lie. We're not. We're supposed to lean on our neighbors. We're supposed to be friends with our neighbors. It feels so much good being friends with your neighbors. I happen to come from a region of Canada that is it's extremely safe, and extremely safe means friendly. The two end up going hand in hand because there's not a fear of each other. So New Brunswick tends to be a very friendly place, or at least where I came from. And statistically, it just so happened that the postcode where my mom is had the lowest crime rate in Canada, until they did have a house break-in. I think that probably changed the crime rate. But it's the kind of place where people don't lock their car, and as a kid they left the keys in the ignition for convenience, and Mom didn't lock her door for years. Why would she need to lock her door? So I came from that kind of place. So in Toronto here, I have a higher level of trust for others than the people around me. That makes me a joiner. It makes me someone who loves getting people together. And when I moved into this building, which is a condo in downtown Toronto, it was 2020 November, and we were all separated from each other in the pandemic, I put a note on every door introducing myself, and I welcomed them to join me on a Zoom meet. I wasn't going to let the fact that we were wearing masks and we couldn't get together to stop me from reaching out to my neighbors. And I met one neighbor on the Zoom meet, and it was totally worth it, because we became walking buddies that went out for long walks every single day. and that was good for both of us. And I came to know the building a little bit through him, of course. And then over time, continuing to reach out every year, inviting everyone. Oh, this year I didn't invite everyone over. Well, I did it through the Facebook group this year. The building itself has a Facebook group, and I play the piano and sing. So at Christmas time, on the Facebook group of the building, I opened my door and said, anyone who wants to come sing Christmas carols with me at the piano, come to the 12th floor and listen for the music. That's the level of trust I have with my neighbors. And it feels good in your body to trust your neighbors. We're supposed to trust your neighbors. And when you trust them, they really do trust you back. I really have a hard time believing a neighbor would come into my home and take anything out with them. No. Why would they do that? Right? That's my, but if you have a traumatized viewpoint and you think other people are bad and other people steal, or maybe you think non-Christians aren't kind, that causes you to be suspicious, and it causes you to co-create a different kind of relationship. So the 4-book set started, as I've come back to that, circled through that a few times. I know I never finished that story. It became a collection of books, but it also became a collection of workbooks. Because I made a worksheet for every chapter of the United States of Disconnection that I put free on the loveloops.love. And that workbook's something that people could download for free and print it off and start their own book club. Ready to go. It's already there. And it's coming out on the Substack chapter by chapter. The first book's about understanding what's happening. The second book is more like the United States of, the path back to us is coming. The United States of reconnection is coming, and Love Loops, a path back to us. They've had a lot of iterations. I've redone it and redone it and redone it and redone it and redone it. So I get mixed up myself. But I've created my final set of 4 book covers, and it's just a matter of editing and writing a little bit more. This matters so very much to me. This matters so much. I have spent most of my working hours working on these resources and not working on things that pay the bills, which is clinical sessions. I've spent all my money and time researching for these things instead of marketing to get more clinical sessions, so I could use more clinical sessions. But at the same time, if I'd had more, I wouldn't have had the time to write what I've written. It's kind of bizarre. Doing this project has caused a lot of hardship financially. And it needs to make a difference. I need people to see this. I need people to find this, because we need to learn to love each other again. And we need voices of truth in this age of disinformation. And I'm in a place to do that. People might say, oh, why a Canadian? Because I'm safe here. I can say whatever I want, right? I'm safe. I will not be able to visit America during this administration, but I can say whatever I want without fear. Fear that ICE isn't going to somehow increase its scope and end up somehow tracking me. Because in fact, my partner isn't yet Canadian. And that's it. Isn't that funny? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it's my ex-partner, in fact, but that's not the point of it. This matters a lot. You can find Love Loops Press at at books.by. I'll be uploading them then there. And be part of the movement. What you can do is reach out to your neighbor today. Say, hi, I've been meaning to ask you over for dinner. The place was always just a mess. Say whatever you need to say. But, the truth is you didn't have the support to do that kind of thing before, and now you do have the support to do it. And the support's literally on loveloops.love, whether it's reaching out for a potluck, or just having someone over, getting to know neighbors. It's good. It's good for us. We're supposed to feel with each other, create that feeling of safety with each other, and create love loops together. And you can make love loops on the phone. And love loops don't mean that you have to, it doesn't mean that you need to ignore your emotional boundaries and have people near you that are depleting your emotional system if you don't have anything to deplete. I was living in a state of not having any emotional resources left, so I wasn't able to go into my family system where I found it draining to be invisible in a kind of way. As the only non-Christian, to be seen different than you are, that in itself is an erasure that's hard to explain to people. So creating love loops, it doesn't mean put yourself in a situation where your nervous system's going to be overwhelmed. We hope in time that those systems will change through understanding and through waking up into a shared reality. If you live in a different reality than people around you live in, that's a form of disconnection that you can't truly ignore, right? It is a form of disconnection. We used to have that connection way more. When I was a kid, most people watched the CBC National for their news. Most people, I think, it was so common. And then you'd go to the grocery store and literally everyone knows what everyone's talking about. Like, oh, did you see that story in the National last night? Oh yeah, oh my goodness, that one. Or they're talking about a different one or another one. Just a few papers, the local paper and the regional paper. So they had a shared reality. And journalists were respected as people who were reaching for the truth, not being assumed as someone who wants to spread propaganda and gaslight me. That came with emotional immaturity. And the assumption that you can't trust journalists, that is the emotional immaturity, and that's the traumatized world that a lot of people are living in. Because some of them you can't trust, right? We're not allowed to say the big stupid agency that is constantly spreading misinformation, because I guess you can be liable for it. But that is ridiculous. It just should never have been okay, and it should not be okay, and it should be ended. It should be ended now. Creating false realities for people is literally pulling people apart. When you don't share a reality with others, you don't feel your deep connection with them. How can you? If your closest people literally think science is evil, calling your prime minister a baby killer, it's a baby killer. Believing all the propaganda about late-term abortions, that was disinformation. You shouldn't be allowed to disinform. You should not be allowed to disinform and cause fear. We are absolutely watching the results of that as ICE agents attack innocent Americans and innocent non-Americans, honestly. But for God's sakes, they're all Americans. The United States took over that term as if they're the egocentric love child of the world. We all live in North America and South America on this section, so we're all Americans in that kind of way, right? They should actually change that term from that egocentric, we're Americans. What about all the South Americans? Oh my heavens. And all the other North Americans. They really should change to have it. They're actually, have your own nationality name. Don't take the continent. Jeez. Oh, we're watching egocentricity just played out, which is, narcissism on a cultural scale. And that's what I'm here for. It's the reason I'm writing these books. We need to be more like Denmark and teach empathy in our schools. I think I got that right. In my research, I found quite a few different programs and things that we need to be teaching empathy in our schools. That's real. And that's why I'm working on school resources as well. And teachers are burning out. Oh, I was almost into that. I've already gotten to an hour. Teachers are dealing with all the dysregulation of families coming through the students, and they're needing to be teachers, and they're needing to be counselors, and they're constantly putting out fires, and they're constantly overwhelmed, and they're burning out. And that needs attention. We can't wait for all the teachers to quit. And how they feel matters. You're not supposed to be crying at the end of the day. They're going home depleted, having nothing left for their family. Their nervous system is already like this, and then their own kid needs comfort, and they don't have anything left. And their own family suffers. Right? That's not okay. We need ways to create love loops in classrooms so that classrooms are not emotionally draining nightmares. And we need to create love loops with teachers and parents through understanding and support, and love loops with teachers to teachers, supporting each other so you don't feel alone in the struggle, so that you know that Mary across the hall has your back, and checking in with each other. How's your morning going, Mary? Checking in with each other and being honest about how it's going. We're supposed to share the burden. And start weekly circles where you talk about the things and deal with it together. And be able to express your emotions and be vulnerable together. Makes it more bearable. Too many teachers are working alone in their classrooms and then dealing with disgruntled parents and dealing with dysregulated kids and dealing with special needs, and they're just overwhelmed, and they should be connecting with others. And we need 2 bodies in every classroom. There needs to be 2 bodies. I mean, two adult bodies that are in charge, because one of them is always putting out fires and dealing with emotional dysregulation issues, and the other one has the ability to teach. The education system is going just for that alone, for the fact that teachers, how much time do they spend dealing with individual issues? And some of them very legitimate issues, but it takes all the teachers' time and energy. They are not superheroes, but they're trying to be. So Love Loops is about all these things. It means so very much to me. It's so sad turning on the news, right? So like and share. I don't know what this video is becoming. I'm guessing I'm going to have to drop it into some program to chop it into a whole bunch of pieces because no one watches an hour. I guess I should have recorded it in a YouTube style. I've just been holding my phone in my hand the whole time. Oh. I'm in my little office here, and there's Jake's down there under my desk. I don't know if you can see him. Hi, Jake. He also sleeps on the sofa, but thanks for watching. Oh, and come visit us. usofd.com is where you can find the first book. usofd.com. No, theusofd.com. Oh my heavens. theusofd.com.